and welcome to this workshop on online assessment. Just a bit of background. I'm in the physics cluster at the Westville campus in the School of Chemistry and Physics. And I'm not an expert in online pedagogy or assessment. Like probably many people, I'm new to this. And I'm a volunteer. I volunteered to help out, and I was asked to prepare this presentation. And I'm aware that many people have knowledge of this that I don't have. And so I see this as really a time to stimulate a discussion. I've been studying up online pedagogy and starting with online assessments and the technicalities of it. I got really interested in the online pedagogy itself. And so at this stage, I've improved what I know, but I don't know all the technical details and I can't answer all the questions. And I think what will be very interesting is to hear from the wealth of experience and expertise and so on from everyone present. It's quite daunting in such a big group of colleagues, but interesting at the same time. So I've prepared a short presentation. I had put a short video of it on Moodle. I've made a shorter version just for some talking points. And then I'll look at specifics of what I've found out about actually setting questions on Moodle. And as I've said, especially the calculated question. So what I'll do is share my screen. And at this stage, I can't see any comments. I'm trying to see if I can put the chat screen on my screen, and I don't seem to be able to. I just haven't figured that out yet. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So, online assessment. I've already introduced myself. And how will I do online assessment online? I originally called this How Will It Be Done? But of course, there's 1,000 different people doing it. So how will I do it? And so let me start with the conclusion I came to. Is for my classes, I've got at the moment a class of 20 students in second year major stream in physics. And I'll be starting with about the same number of students in an honors course on programming. Other colleagues have classes of 500 students. And for me, I thought I'll use the Moodle quiz, the Moodle assignment, both individual, and what is new for me is group. And interestingly, I've found that my second year class have been quite enthusiastic about the group assignments. And then another option is the Zoom interview, which is like an in-person interview in which one can ask probing questions about the work students have done or new questions. And reading about it, I've read from famous online experts like Tony Bates. I've followed Dr. Craig Blewett's course on online teaching from our own university. And everything could be assessed. For example, you could assess forum posts and wiki posts and all sorts of things. But in my humble opinion, I'd rather leave them out this time because we are doing emergency remote teaching. We haven't had the time to totally redesign our courses online. And so I think we will learn what works by doing, just as we expect our students to do. And I'm learning all the time from how my students are reacting to what I'm trying out online. So the context is online teaching. And so when I started off reading up about this, I thought, right, online assessment, that's the task. But I soon became immersed in the background of online teaching in general. And there was this interesting article about that we're doing emergency remote teaching. In fact, the college sandbox, the place for testing things out, is called emergency remote teaching, because we haven't been able to redesign online courses. We've suddenly had to go online. And as Craig Blurt and others, Tony Bates, remind us or emphasize, that online teaching is not just transferring the classroom online. As they say, the cut and paste from classroom to online doesn't work. And there's some things that will be either very difficult or impossible that we were doing in the classroom that we can't do online. And that's one of the big challenges. So, you know, it asks for a change of mindset. On the other hand, online teaching does open new avenues. For example, automatic marking of quizzes with instant feedback to students. And there are other kinds of interesting questions that can be done on computer that can't be done in the classroom. And some of the advice is do post short videos, not very long videos. Use a few Zoom meetings, don't overload. And set activities for students to do. But, you know, this is advice. There are no rules and absolutes. One might find that using more Zoom meetings is good, you know, and maybe longer videos are better. Students might be prepared to listen to them. So, but this is just a kind of general advice coming from the online experts. Okay, I'm just checking. I might have jumped a page. Okay. So this is, for example, my weekly plan for my Phys 2 and 3 second year physics major class. Here's the UKZN timetable. And I've just scheduled 2 Zoom periods a week. I've said to them I can schedule more within the timetable. And then I've used the double period in the timetable available for a quiz. So I could have a timed quiz during that time. Taking into account they may have to do things like take a photograph of what they've done and upload it. They might have connection problems. They might be collecting food deliveries or something like that. So, but anyway, this is my scheme. It's not hard and fast. And then down below are the ongoing things they can do. Of course, they can study the resources we provide for them, the videos and so on. They can do practice quizzes, and I've found my class, many of the students are appreciating having a practice quiz. By practice assignments, I mean that they hand in their written work and I go over it. So it's not for marks, it's just for feedback. And then Moodle actual assignments for marks, individual and group. At the moment, I've just set a group task for my 3 groups within the 21 students. And they seem to be quite enjoying that. So I'll see how it goes. As I say, it's not a hard and fast timetable, but that's what I'm doing at the moment. So active learning and formative assessment, the experts like Craig Blurt emphasize that students, because they're no longer in the classroom and they lose all those cues of face-to-face contact, they need to be active. And in any case, being active and creating, not just passively consuming, although passively consuming is part of what they do, and the brain is still active when consuming, he means, and others mean, being active in terms of contributing something back into the course. And he says that students learn better that way, online and offline as well. So the advice is to structure the course as a sequence of activities, and the assessment is an important part of these activities, maybe the backbone. So use a lot of formative assessment. I have to confess, I never knew what was meant by formative and summative, but now I do. So the formative assessment is things, practice quizzes to improve learning, not for marks. And summative is what we usually think of, or I usually think of as assessment, the exams, the TUTs and prac reports and so on, tests that are for marks, to sum up and to rate and evaluate what the students have learned. So the formative assessment activities and practice are, in my case, the practice quiz and practice assignment. These are Moodle activities. And the practice assignment would be written work. I'll come to that in a moment. And although I wouldn't deem them to count for marks in the final result, they can nevertheless be part of the marking process. For example, they can be a prerequisite for summative assessment. So one can set in Moodle a prerequisite that you have to have at least attempted the practice quiz before you can take the summative quiz for marks. I don't know how that would work in practice. Or you could also say that there's low stakes, that completing the practice quiz or practice assignment is worth a few marks. They need to complete it, they get a handful of marks just to encourage participation in this activity. So the advice is also to integrate the assessment with learning, not just have it at the end after all the course, but to make it part of the learning and make the formative and also the summative assessment part of teaching, more the formative, but one can get feedback from the summative and to use the feedback from the assessments to improve the student learning. So here's a schematic in which the student does some study of the resources, notes and so on, does a practice quiz, goes back to study, redoes the practice quiz. It can all be the same quiz, doesn't have to be different quizzes. In my case, I just have at the moment one practice quiz, which students can attempt multiple times. And that's the formative part. And then at the end, they go on to write the quiz for marks, the summative. And in parallel with that, they can optionally have assignments. Some could be for practice and some for marks. But that goes on asynchronously in their own time. So the assignments on Moodle is one of the activities, or what Moodle calls a module, can include photographs of handwritten work. I've already had some coming through for one of the practice assignments I've set, actually for a practice quiz, where there's one question that asks for something handwritten, a diagram. And it's easy enough to photograph that with a cell phone and upload it. They can type the text in the text box. There's an equation editor that they can use. They can also put in diagrams, photos, even videos. They could, of course, just first type it with various components and produce a PDF and upload it. And all of these are methods to assess workings such as derivations. I haven't come across anything we can really practically use to automatically mark mathematical derivations and other kinds of more complex answers that we're accustomed to settings, and certainly in physics for higher level students. There is software available that tries to do something, but it isn't available in Moodle. And I'm not aware that UKZN has such a facility. So other than using the internet to transfer the image, we can use the old-fashioned method of marking something by hand that's been sent by photograph. Students can also upload other files. One could ask them to upload a PowerPoint or a video they've produced, possibly, or code that they've written in the case of a programming course. And as I've said, what is sent in on an assignment is marked by hand. You can give feedback, you can annotate things on the computer. One of the big questions that's bothered me for a while, and I'm sure it's bothered a lot of people, is how to reduce cheating. And the basic conclusion, it's not possible because the student is sitting in a remote location on a computer. But we can try. We can certainly try and discourage cheating. And there's some interesting views on this out there amongst academics worldwide. Well, one of the simple ways is to use a time limit for a quiz, what we normally do for tests anyway, so that students don't have time to spend the whole day getting answers from elsewhere, including from other students. There is randomization that one can use in quizzes. I'll take a look at that in a second. Make questions ungoogleable, maybe easier said than done, but make questions that are not easy, just factual recall that can be looked up, but that require that are personalized, require the student to explain something. I don't know, there's all sorts of things one can do. And the idea is that, you know, if you can't prevent the openness that the student's in, don't. Allow open notes, open book, open internet, and even open WhatsApp, and set the questions accordingly. Again, easier said than done, but that's the general idea to explore. Then one isn't so troubled by it. Instead of being sort of invested in trying to reduce the cheating by some technical means, just accept that this type of open access does exist and rather adapt the questions. There are technologies to do remote invigilation, which is called proctoring in the United States. Various programs that watch the students, that use artificial intelligence for facial recognition. You sometimes turn on the microphone, have a second camera behind the student. You can freeze the screen. You can block internet access. All of these things do exist and could be tried, but they, for practical purposes, as far as I'm aware, are not available in Moodle or at UKZN. So they don't seem to be practical at the moment. One way one could do things is to have a Zoom interview, short Zoom interview, maybe with 2 or more academics present, and use that as an assessment, and use it to verify the assessments. So they get probing questions. So the previous assessments are provisional, and really the material to be finally confirmed in the Zoom interview. And for a smaller class, this, and a higher level class, this certainly could be something to explore. So in getting to specifics, in a quiz for marks on Moodle, there are mechanisms to discourage cheating by having the timed quiz, so they don't have too much time to look around. You can select questions randomly from a question bank, so students get different sets of questions. Within Moodle, you can shuffle or randomize the question order so that students can't say question 1, the answer is A, question 2, the answer is B, and that makes it a bit more difficult. Moodle does allow one-way sequencing, excuse me, so that you can look at one question, then go on to the next, but can't go back. But personally, I think that's unfair. I think it's good for the student to be able to go back on what they've done. Sorry, coughing problem. And there is now, in the calculated question, which we'll look at, there's the option to have random input values, so that you can't say the answer is 2.3 and circulate that. The student has to calculate, each student has to calculate their own answer at least. And then the general principle of trusting students. They trust us, they trust the university. We trust them, teach them the importance of trust and honesty, especially during this pandemic. But in practice, well, we'd have to see how far that goes. Finally, the idea of, I'm just looking again at the idea of using a portfolio in the Zoom interview. So this is an idea again that the online experts talk about, which is to use a set of student work, perhaps selected, accumulated through time, which in my case, could be practice quizzes, practice assignments, and the marked assessments. Can be other things as well, which is then verified by a Zoom interview. I've already mentioned this idea. So a student can give a presentation about the work, and then the examiners can ask questions about the portfolio explicitly to probe and check that it is work that has been done by the student, not someone else. The examiners can ask questions to assess the student's subject knowledge in general, so it becomes an assessment in its own right. And the examiners can also, in the same vein, and say in physics, maths, and so on, ask students to solve a problem on a whiteboard as part of the probing. And the interview can actually serve as the final assessment, a kind of capstone assessment. So one isn't relying so much on past assessments, and therefore one has to worry less about cheating. That brings me to the end of the presentation. And I think this might be a good point to have some, before we look at some specifics on Moodle, at least what I've managed to find out, we can have some questions or discussion, most valuably. I haven't been able to get my chat on screen. So I simply, unless...
I think there was a comment.
Yes. Could you just, okay, I'm going to stop sharing so I can see the comments.
Yeah.
No need to stream the video. And I'm going to look at the chat. Chats. All right. So right, so there's a first, John Pocock. I've used practice quizzes on Moodle for the past 10 years, which makes it 9 years and 11 months more than me, with little participation from students. Has anyone noticed a greater take-up from the latest period? And then Big C, no, about 50% responded to the latest quiz after numerous reminders. And do students even have access to Zoom?
I think they can download a free version of it.
Well, the so I'm just looking in the Q&A. There's also a question and answer session box I've noticed here. So Zoom, I think you download it from the Zoom site. All my students have managed to download Zoom and set it up. So when you log on to a new Zoom meeting, it gives you a prompt to download the software and install it. I don't think you even have to be connected to the university in any way to do so. And it's in Moodle. There's an activity. I'll take a look at that in a minute. And how many people, the take up of quizzes, practice quizzes. Yeah, maybe being online would prompt them to do more than when they're in the classroom. There's another in the separate question and answer box. Any thoughts on students that don't have a computer and are going to be doing all their remote learning on a smartphone? Well, I was wondering about that because some of the students we've surveyed in the School of Chemistry and Physics are only on a smartphone. So if they can see the question and work it out on paper, then I think certainly for excuse me, for answering multiple choice questions and short answers, they can type in a selection or something short on the cell phone fairly easily. For typing something longer, indeed, it'll be different. And yeah, but sure. And what about the students who have no connection at all? What I've thought is, if and when they get back to campus or allowed back into res under controlled conditions and have access to the technology, they could catch up because everything was already canned online and we could catch up. The sending comments and questions. So I don't know if everyone can see it. There is a Q&A box and there's a chat screen. So one of the questions on the question and answer box is, in case that you have 200 students in your module, can they all join the Zoom lecture at the same time? So that's a technical question. I thought that using the UKZN license, they can. Perhaps Narisha could answer that.
I don't know what the capacity is using the license compared to downloading it for free. We'll have to check that.
No, but we academics have the
The
license, professional license, and perhaps the students. Well, our engineering class has, I don't know, something like 500 students, and they're using Zoom, but I don't know if 500 could be logged on at one time. My assumption is yes, because otherwise, why use it? But again, that's something that there must be an answer. It's just that I don't know it authoritatively. So John Pocock said, I did a survey a month ago from the chat bar of my final years, and only 50% responded to a forum call asking whether they could connect a month ago. During the same period, 100% logged on to the Moodle page. So there are these. Somehow I've seen something somewhere saying that we're discouraged from using WhatsApp, even though that seems to be the most universal means of communication. I don't see why we can't use WhatsApp set up in some special way to protect one's own privacy, not get calls at 3 a.m.
Mohammed says that the UKZN license is unlimited for the organizer to host any number of students.
Okay, great. So 200, 500, 1,000, whatever. All 40,000. But in principle, yeah, so that's the answer to that. There's another one, Corin Prisner. As far as I know, we are still bound by the Green Book. Do you mean the handbook? How creative can we get with assessments? I'm coming back to that because that's an interesting one. I'm teaching third year. I'm over in the question and answer box. Third year engineering students in Howard College. The class is large. Okay, the students do not have a license, but we have academics have a license. So as long as we have the license, we can host a meeting for a large number. Now, the question about the handbook. Yeah, well, I suppose ultimately that's an institutional question for the university to answer. But because we're in an unprecedented situation, I was talking to Rudy Kimmy, who's now running a small business college in Cape Town. And he said, this situation we're in calls on us to be creative and to be innovative and to think out of the box. And we've come from a situation where we are moving from a classroom situation, which has a whole lot of rules, regulations to that work under those circumstances. But going online now, we are in a different situation. But the thing is, how do we hold 3-hour exams that are invigilated? The question is, how creative can we get with the assessments? Well, I would like to think very creative. In any case, as academics, we research and we innovate and research new ideas. It's true, we can't. Some of the advice I've seen from experts is don't experiment with students. They need to have something simple and reliable, and they need to have clarity about what they're doing. But it depends what creative assessments we're thinking of. So for me, it's already quite creative to have a group assignment, because I think, how do I get individual? So from Brenda Moodley, I think under the current circumstances, the university will allow us to be creative in our assessments. We'll need to notify college how we have changed from the Green Book, but it is allowed. We have to make a shift from the normal way of assessing, and that is acceptable. Well, that's great. From our academic leader, teaching and learning in the School of Chemistry and Physics, who has insight into the institutional thinking. I would like to say it'd be nice to hear from everybody what they're doing, so then we find out what the new ideas are and how they're working. Just as John Pocock shared from us after 10 years of experience. And we also have in our physics cluster for example, Mervyn Moodley, who's been using quizzes for much longer than me. And there's a lot to be shared about, you know, what we can do and what works and what doesn't.
If anyone would like to share, then you can just raise your hand and we will unmute your mic. And if you are sharing on the chat facility, please click to all panelists and attendees so we can all see what you are chatting about.
Okay, I see, yeah, there's one or two people who've sent the question to the panelist, which means only Narisha and myself can read it. And not everyone, so yeah, important, all panelists and attendees in the little checkbox to all panelists and attendees. In fact, I had mine checked on only panelists, so I could have fallen into that situation myself. Could I go on to, hang on, question and answer sessions? Yes, could everyone send in comments? Please share with everyone. All right, that's a question of checking to all panelists and attendees. How can we bring tutors to this online assessment? Tutors are appointed to take tutorials and mark assignments. Well, in the physics curriculum at Westville, our first year tutors, teaching assistants we call them, have been already from the beginning interacting with students. And there is a mechanism within Moodle to allocate students to individual tutors who are, I don't know the exact mechanics of that, partly because I've been researching what I need to know and I'm not in that situation. But I think that is something that is possible. And one can put students into group on Moodle. There's a grouping. You can random groups or put them into, or they join their own groups or whatever. I found that what's happened. Oh, Paula, what?
Unmute.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Hello, Paula.
Hi, Alan. How are you?
All right.
I just wanted to say, people probably know, but you can actually upload the student numbers and the names of the TAs as non-edited teachers, so onto Moodle, so they can then have access to everything onto Moodle, including marking some of the assignments if you wish. But you have to upload them as non-editing teachers, just in case people don't know that.
Yes, thanks, Paula. There's a lot that can be done in Moodle. I hadn't really envisaged going through all of Moodle because because this of the brief and of the time available. But certainly these are all aspects that are very relevant to assessment and practice, especially for the large classes, and very worthy of attention. So I think what I'd like to do is go on to look at a Moodle page of what I know. And again, I'm aware that there are people present who will have done this more than me and know more than me. But let's, again, look at this, at what I've got, and that can be a talking point. So I'm going to, are all the questions answered that we wanted to? Okay, a few more interesting comments. So let's not rush on. So yeah, can we bring tutors from, I can't read, Ali, someone. I think we need to change the assessment significantly from our normal assessment. For example, prac write-ups using Excel for graphs or running models are going to be impossible for students without assessments. Assessments using calculation showing understanding are probably more feasible. yeah, it's, I mean, it depends on the technology available and the practicality of what one's doing. So, well, that's the advice from the online experts. Not everything is possible or always easy on some scale, but some things are more easy and possible. Then John Pocock, in a module last year, I'm just reading what he said, we used Moodle to run an open book exam internationally. Very interesting. It was set in a normal situation at the university. Each student had access to a computer, so in classroom but online. While others in Uganda, Kenya, and Europe who were remote then carried out the exam at the same time. So how did that go? And if you add tutors as this is Arusha Desai's non-editing teachers, ensure you password protect the quizzes that you've set up and prevent tutors viewing the quiz and sharing. Okay, so preventing the tutors from colluding with the students. I suppose that is one hazard we have to face. With Microsoft Online, students can access Microsoft apps. Yeah, okay, there are other platforms other than Moodle. But then, yeah, all of that's possible. There are other platforms, Google Slides, the Google Suite, and so on. But what was John Pocock's experience of the open book remote exam? John, would you like to say something if you've had this experience? Oh, John Pocock. Okay, chat, hand up. Narisha, can you unmute John Pocock, please? And Devashini. Hello?
I'm just looking for, okay, there we go.
They've got their hands up. John Pocock, hands up at the top. Okay, I think I can unmute.
Yeah, it's unmuted.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, the open book exam, this was a fourth year module. I think it had about 20 participants, and a number of those participants were part of a research project that we were running anyway. So they were with the Gates Foundation and Gates Foundation projects. So what we actually did was we took them onto the module as not for non-degree purposes, because they wanted it was fecal sludge management, so highly romantic. So we had people in Africa, in Europe, and in the US all taking that module. And at the same time, we were doing online learning for the entire module across the world through Moodle. The assessments were all done through assignments in the original part of the course. And then there was an open book examination, which was actually at a scheduled time at UK's then. We basically got students into a big room where they were effectively more than 2 meters apart anyway. They had their own materials, and at the same time they had an internet access point. It was fully invigilated, and they had the 2 hours or 3 hours, I can't remember what it was, for the examination. At the same time, students across the rest of the world, where there was only a 1 hour time difference or a 2 hour time difference, took the exam at the same time. There was one participant in the US who had to take the exam later that day, because obviously it would have been about 3 a.m. In Seattle when the exam was written. So they actually took the exam later. It was released to them through Moodle at a given time, and so it was confirmed that they were online and they were ready for it. The exam was externally moderated, internally moderated, and obviously internally examined. And I think the pass rate was about 80% first time around. There were 2 students who had a SUP, and I think 1 student didn't actually manage to pass the course. And then on the SUP, the 2 students actually managed to get through on the SUP without a problem, and they were local. They were at UK's then, the 2 that had to take the SUP. So that's pretty much what happened.
Okay, thanks. That's interesting. And did you find that, did you have any issues with cheating and integrity?
There weren't actually. I mean, everything was run through Turnitin, as well as obviously run through the external examiner, and you know, effectively they were asked essay type questions, and it wasn't a case of they could just cut and paste from somewhere, and even if someone else had sent them a section, so it would have been obvious that it was cut and paste. And as we say, they were all across the world. So I mean, you know, the ones as I say, there was one in, I think there was one in Uganda, there was in Kampala, there were two students, I think, in Malawi, but one was in Blantyre and one was in another part of the country. So it didn't make any difference. They couldn't cheat with each other. The only thing they could do was Google and cut and paste, which would have shown up straight away on Turnitin.
Okay, thanks. Because I see from Mewomo, he sent Mewomo you sent your comment to the panelists, not all panelists and attendees. So again, when you send a message, look at the checkbox and tick all panelists and attendees so that everyone can see it. All right, so his question, which I can see, and the question from Ellie are similar. I'll just read out Mewoma's question or comment. Online assessment will be a bit challenging for third year taking mathematics modules. They're expected to take an essay with lots of proofs and mathematical symbols, which ties in with Ellie's question. Did the exam questions have calculations? Were they expected to write by hand or type? John.
Sorry, I was just going to
write it.
Okay. I'm unmuted. They didn't have any calculation-based questions to any great extent. I think there were a couple of figures that had to be put in a few places. It was mainly exam-type questions discussing context and discussing solutions for sanitation in various areas. They could either type their solutions, or alternatively, if they were at UK's Den, they could write it in an exam booklet. And those could be scanned and then sent to the external examiner, and the internal examiners would mark them. An internal moderator could see the scan as well.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, well, I suppose I don't know. I don't know what the solutions are exactly. I mean, a student can write by hand and then photograph the solution and upload it. The Zoom interview could be a way of assessing mathematics, get the students to, I don't know how exactly they could write on the computer whiteboard without a stylus, because it's hard to do anything with the cursor. Yeah, this is a good question, which doesn't have immediate answer. I remember a philosopher at UKZN once saying, a university is a place, a community of scholars in which good questions are supplied with dubious answers. Stuart Ferrer has in the question and answer box, does the university have guidelines for internal and external moderation of online summative assessments, especially for exit level modules? Well, perhaps one of the academic leaders teaching and learning could help us out there. Brenda? I'm not aware offhand of the guidelines. I would assume that, no, Brenda, the question is, does the university have guidelines for internal and external moderation of online summative assessments, especially for exit level modules?
Brenda, can I unmute you?
can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not sure if the university has guidelines for online assessments for exit modules. That I'm not aware of. I know they have for our normal methods of assessment for sort of written exams and things like that. But online, I'm not sure at this point in time.
If I just make a comment that, again, from what I've been reading around, because of this coronavirus pandemic, it's like a wartime situation in some ways. It's not normal. And many of the teachers are saying, you know, the priority is the education of the students. That's our priority. The assessment, yes, is important, and that's what this session is about. And students want to be able to finish their degrees, of course. But some universities, for example, UCT is using a pass-fail criterion. So I don't quite know how that works because you still have to have a criterion to pass. But less attention on the precise grade and more on whether the student has fulfilled the general objectives or not. And we could be in a position, hypothetically, where we use all the quizzes and so on, the kind of continuous assessment as the final assessment, and that we don't need to worry too much about setting a final exam with all the checks that we normally have in person. But yeah, does the university have guidelines? Indeed, we need to be guided by the institution as to how to address these things. But, you know, with my class, they're learning, you know, relativity or whatever. And I really want to know that they have understood the topic as my first priority. But yes, it's, I see, Ellen, I see a study guide in the resources section. Can I use the figures, some text, and adapt it for my module in land surveying? I didn't do the study guides. That's somebody else. I just put my resources inside the online assessment section on the Moodle site.
That's the material for tomorrow's workshop. Andre and Deline Fossler will be doing that section. So we can certainly ask them if you can use it. But that workshop is tomorrow at 2 o'clock. So we can ask them for you.
I'd like just to go on to the more technical part of it. Again, to say I'm not an expert in every little detail of setting quizzes on Moodle. Probably someone like John Pocock will have an order of magnitude more knowledge of than me in terms of many of the details. But let me just show you, because it may be interesting, certainly been interesting for me, what I've been going through. This is the ERT sandbox that we have been given access to. And this is my section on online assessment. And generally in Moodle, it's been talked about adding tutors over here. On the right-hand side, you can enroll non-editing teachers. Over here, enroll users as non-editing teachers. But we probably won't have time to go through all of that, just pointing it out. There's also the grade book over here on the right. The grade book keeps a record of everything. So all the examples in the entire course, I think I'm the only one putting on assessments because that's my topic, are over here. And that's in the grade book, the mark record, and the weights are over here as percentages, some of which I haven't assigned yet. And I can make some of these 0, so they don't count. That would be practice quizzes. And then I haven't sorted all of this out properly, but you get the idea. So you can have categories. I haven't actually gone down into that because I don't have enough assessment items here to categorize. I've mainly been worried about, so I'm going to go back. Whoops. Yeah. So here I've got some examples. A quiz example. From our point of view as lecturer, we can add quizzes. So I'll just look at this one. The quiz example. So this is the front cover of the quiz. The questions are not set from inside here. The questions are set on the side over here. So if I scroll down, an administration box opens up for quiz administration specifically, in which I can edit the settings directly. I can also edit the quiz and look at questions in here. If I click edit quiz, this is where I'll look at the questions. And here's a set of questions that I've devised of the different types, and we'll take a look at those. So you can do a preview of the quiz. So we may as well do that now since we're here. We get a preview of the quiz. Now, I don't know why I'm already in question 5. That's because I was checking it earlier. So, whoops. No, it's all going wrong for me. All right, so here are typical kinds of questions. A true, false, a carbon nucleus has 8 protons. False, which is closest to the sun? This is the multiple. So let me just go back again, sorry. I want to make. So this is the true, false type of question. So Moodle has a number of different question types. The true, false. It has the multiple choice. We're used to that. It has a matching question, cytosine bonds with guanine, adenine with thymine. And this setup is taking one question per page, and you can change that. Granite is igneous, and so on. I won't answer them all. So that one previously, sorry, I must not jump around too much. This is each type I'm covering a fill-in word question, where you have a sentence and then you fill in words from a set. Each one has a set and you can fill words in. It's the same set in each case here. And down here, when you're looking at how they're formed, there's a set, and you can set that up in the setup for the question. Question 5 is a drag and drop. When I mix acid with base, I do remember some chemistry, I get salt and water. And I haven't done it, but there's a similar kind of question where you have a diagram and you can move things across and put them on the diagram, drag and drop diagram, and markers, which I must admit, I haven't got into that yet. Short answer question. Albert Einstein, one word or a phrase, and it needs to be exactly right. And the Moodle gives you the option to have several possible right answers. You know, I might accept if it's spelt with a lowercase a. This is a numerical question where you ask to supply a number. And then the calculated question. Now, this is the one I'm to address more closely. So I can, maybe this is not going to be correct, but we'll take a look at the calculation. And here's my answers, incomplete answer there. Submit all and finish. And once you submit, you can't change it. And then it takes me through and I can see where I was correct and where I was wrong. And there are various things you can do here. You can put comments and all sorts of things. So this is the preview. Now I'm going to finish that, sorry, a review. Well, there's a preview and a review. So in this example, I'm in what I call the front cover with all the settings of a quiz. So there's a whole lot of settings, 13 different settings, and I've starred the ones that I'll look at to change. And so it's better just to go through all of that. So there's a whole lot of stuff to read there. But I'm not editing at the moment. So what I'll do is go back here and go up to the top right and turn the editing on. Now, if I wanted to start with a new quiz, I'd do add an activity or resource over here in the section. And then Moodle comes up with a whole list. Now, in the old days, about 2 months ago, all I used to do was add a file, and then I made a big advance by adding a folder. However, now I've used many more of these. So these are the resources. You can make a book, which is basically a set of pages. So it's a more condensed way of presenting material than lots and lots of files on the course page. And the page is a one-page book. So a book is a set of pages. A label is a piece of text you can place in the middle of the course page if you want to say something about the section. Lightbox gallery are pictures. I'm not quite sure what that is. Here you can post a video, Kaltura. IMS is a special kind of way of packaging lessons. That's a standard. I don't know how to use that. And folder is a concise way of grouping a whole lot of files if you don't want to, again, make the students scroll a lot on the course page. And then up here, you can schedule a Zoom meeting straight from Moodle. For those who may not have seen it, you schedule it and put in the times. And then there's a whole lot of things. So let's just focus on, there's the assignment up here and then the quiz down here. So let's suppose I want to add a quiz. I'll add it. And I give the quiz a name. I'd set up the worked examples to avoid a long thing. I don't have to have a description of what it is, and I can choose to put it on the course page or not. I'll just skip a few things. And there are no questions in this quiz at the moment. To add questions, we have to go to another point, which doesn't seem to be available at the moment. And this is all the metadata. No questions at the moment. So we can choose to open it. We need to enable, and we can choose a time when it's available. We can choose a time when it closes. We can choose within this time a time limit. I'm not quite sure what happens if you can give it a time limit, even if there isn't a general time when it's available. I'm not sure what happens if you make the time limit longer than the close minus open, because I haven't tried that out. But this is how you would set up a quiz that's either available for a certain amount of days, say, or a timed quiz where it starts at this time and ends 40 minutes later. This here is open attempts are submitted automatically, so that if the student hasn't actually clicked submit, they still get marks. So it's advised for anything that's important and timed to just let the students, once the time is up, whatever they've done up to then is submitted. You can have a grace period if you like. Down here is the grade. There's no grade, there's no category at the moment in the grade book. There might be a category for tests, exams, etc. But I haven't set one up, so it's not available. A grade to pass is a good idea, 50%. I think this is percentages. Doesn't actually say. And you can have an unlimited number of times, or you can have one attempt. That would be in a summative. This might be in a formative, or you might want to have students doing it 3 times and not go on, and rather do the whole thing again. Highest grade, this is based on the number of attempts. You can use the last attempt or the average or the highest they get. The layout is you can have a new page on every question, or you can have all questions on one page or 3 questions on a page. Maybe you want to change it to that. The question behavior, you can either, this is part of the randomization. If you have a set of questions, you can choose to shuffle, so it's randomly shuffled. But if you're using something like question 2, refer to question 1, then don't shuffle it. And this is rather important. Do they get the answers after the test? This would be the norm for a test that they're writing for marks. Or practice tests, immediate, interactive with multiple tries. Immediate feedback, as far as I know, is that as the student answers the question, they immediately get the answer. I think that's right. I can be corrected if I'm wrong. But interactive with multiple tries is a standard for the practice quizzes. And over here is fortunately a help box that tells you what happens. And if you want more help, you can go to the Moodle docs where it's all spelled out in detail. So I won't worry about that now because we don't have that much time. And then the review options. So this review option is connected to how things behave. So when you have deferred feedback, now here I must admit I haven't mastered all of this, but there are I'm hesitating here because I don't understand why all of this is marked with ticks. But basically, during the attempt is when the student does the question, the things that are checked is what they see. Do they see whether that's correct or not? You think you shouldn't see anything. Normally, these are checked off. So that's why I'm a bit puzzled by what I'm seeing. Okay, so interactive with multiple tries, but you think deferred would switch off this. So anyway, that's a technical question we can come to. The point is that this list, which is the same for all 4 columns, is a list of things that the student sees. So for example, immediately after the question, you tick submit, and then they can see the attempt, which is what they've written. Whether it's correct, it'll tell you the marks you get for it. And then there's boxes for specific feedback about your choice of answer or general feedback about the question in general. It'll tell you if the answer is right or wrong. You know, it'll tell you what the right answer is. So that's the solution. And then some overall feedback. And these are set whether the student's doing the question immediately after they've done the question. Later, while it's open, there's some time delay on that. And then after the quiz is closed, which would be the norm for any summative question, after it's closed, they finish the quiz, then they can see everything about it, the solution, whether it's correct, what marks they got, and so on. If I go show more, allow redo within an attempt, that's off at the moment because of, so allow redo within an attempt, and each attempt builds on the last. Again, I don't want to pretend I know everything about this, and I'm already puzzled about this. Maybe John Pocock can alert us to how that works. But anyway, that's an important part of how it all works. The appearance, I'm just looking at the time, you can have the student be identified or not. That's image plus the name. And you can put extra restrictions. You can ask for a password and the various things there. You can look at that. And then you can put a comments on, depending on what mark they got, what their feedback is. Common modular settings are not really important for us. Restrict access, you can then add restrictions. For example, they say don't use this date because it can conflict with the times you've already put on. But you could say that you need to do a certain other activity, must be complete, or you must have a pass grade in order to permit you to do the current quiz. Then activity completion, the student can mark it complete by themselves, or it might be only complete automatically when the student has received a grade or when they've done all the attempts. tags are interesting because when you add a tag, it helps you in the search, especially useful for questions. Anyway, I'm going to just go out of the settings, and this is save and display. And here, okay, there's a problem with me here. So the grade was a grade of marks and not a percentage, which is why it's given me a warning over there. And then down here somewhere, I'm looking for adding questions. Well, I'm going to just get out of this because I think time is marching on. So let me just go into, let me go into the essay question just to start with. The essay question is very similar to an assignment in which a student is asked something and they can type in their answer. You push this button here and they can get an equation editor and start editing it with arrows, Greek symbols, advanced. They should be coming up, but they're not coming up for some reason right now. Maybe if I start writing, they'll come up. Save equation, and then you can do other things here. So they're different. And then down here, you can add files. So you can upload a file, and I've got something here. Let me just go and find it. It's a long way down and everything. I'm just looking for it now. Okay, so, whoops, not there. Oh, here it is, sorry. So you could, for example, upload, I've got a thing called solution here, and upload it. So this is a way that it's taking a little while. Okay, so there's the solution. Not very big. I'll finish the attempt and I'll submit it. So this is an essay question. And then if I want to look at it, I can, don't know why it's not working. Oh, there it is. So the academic can take a look and see that that's what the student wrote, and you can put ticks on it and so on, evaluate it. So let me go to, okay, randomly selected questions. I just have to edit the quiz. And here I've got some randomly selected questions. If I want to add a question, I click add on the right from a question bank. And oh no, I don't want to do that, sorry. I want to add a random question and I need to choose it from my category of online assessment. And you can have subcategories. And I've tagged all of these. So I want to choose an easy question, say. And then it shows me what the options are, and I'm going to add a random question. So I've added a fourth random question. And so Moodle will select them from the category or subcategory you've chosen, and there will be these tags. So I've used tags of easy, numerical, moderate, and that's how you would set up a random selection from a question bank. So you can select questions from, so in this quiz example up here, for example, it's the first one I set up. I have all of that. And if I want to edit the quiz, I can go over here to edit quiz. You can only edit that. And these are the questions. Now, these questions are also in the question bank. So what I'm going to do is go out of here and just go into the question bank. Now, what's happened? Okay. I want to go into the question bank. Here it is down here. And I want to look at the questions. And look at the category. Whoops, wrong one. Okay, so here are all the questions I've added in my question bank for now. And they're various types. So here you can select them. Here you can, there are tags. And here you can edit the question. So let's just edit that question. That actually is a calculated question. So I've put into a category, there's the name, and then there's the text. This is what appears on the screen. This is in HTML. And the particular thing about a calculated question, it's not the same as a mathematical question where you can look at the algebra. This is just you calculate a number. But these are called the wildcards. So I'm adding X and Y. And what happens is that the student doesn't see X and Y. What the student sees is what is 3.2 plus 4.1 or something. And X and Y are the variables that are given random values. This is where you put the mark, the various other things you can do here. And this is my formula. Now that is, you put the wildcard in its curly brackets, and then you do the algebra. And you'd need to use standard computer style algebra if you were to use, you can do quite a lot of things with this. There's special functions and so on. And that you need to give it a grade. I've already given it a grade. You get 100% for this answer. And there's a tolerance. So I can either have a relative, so this is a 1% tolerance. I can choose nominal, that it has to be a number difference, or geometric. There's some geometric which basically doesn't allow the value to go below 0. So it's got a sort of a tail to the right, and then you can display the answer. You can choose the number of decimals, and then it allows you to put more answers that you can handle the units. Let's not worry about all that too much. You can put in tags here where I've said it's an addition question, it's numerical, and it's easy. And this is where you can add the tags that add extra description. The save changes and continue editing doesn't do much at the moment. You need to save changes down here, and then it takes you to another page. It's a bit involved, where you can do things here where you have shared sets of data values here shared with other questions, which I haven't got into yet. And this is synchronizing with the other shared data sets. So let's suppose there's a unique set of values for this question. And here we go, wildcard by wildcard. So for X, there's a value 6.2 that is generated by Moodle. But what we do is we set the minimum value and a maximum value. We show how many decimal places there are in the value that's going to be displayed to the student. We can choose a log uniform if we want, which basically puts values closer to the lower end, but uniform's fine. So it's going to choose a random value between 5 and 7 for X. We do the same for Y. But what happens is it doesn't generate the random value at the moment that the student attempts the question. That's what I used to think. What happens is that Moodle, when you're setting up the question, generates a set, generates a set of random values. It stores that set. And then when the student answers the question, it randomly selects from that fixed set. That's how it does it. And that, I suppose, I don't know the rationale exactly, is because you need to check that those answers, amongst all the different elements of the set, are reasonable. So you have, this is the correct answer up here. And then you can add items. So it's a little bit of a laborious process. Reuse previous value. I can force regeneration of everything, start all the same, or start all over again. And I want to add 10 new sets, and then I add them. And Moodle's now generated 10 sets using random values of X and Y. And this is, okay, this is because I already had a whole lot. I'm going to delete all 20 that I've got already. I have to press delete now. And now there's nothing there. So I have to go back. I shouldn't have done it that way. I'm going to force regeneration. I'm going to add 10 values, add. Now Moodle has generated 10 sets. I'm now going to display all 10 of them, display. And now Moodle will show me all 10 sets. So these are definite values that are going to be stored and random. So each set is going to be randomly selected when a student takes the question. So after all of that, you can preview. I'm pressing the little preview button on the bottom right. This is what it looks like. And I can check, and it should say, I just need to make this window a bit bigger, right? So it's because I've used magnification. It tells you it's question variant 1. Let's suppose I want to choose 5. Start again with variant 5. It's now 6 plus 3 plus 8 and 2. If I type something that's wrong, I can check, and it's wrong. All right, so let's start again. If I want to, I can fill in the correct response. Save, I think, is to save your answer for later. And then I can submit and finish, and then close preview, and the various things you can do with that. So that's basically how the calculated question works. And then there are these other questions. So here's another calculated question. I'm just going to edit it. And so that's the mathematics using tech. Here's the solution I've put. And if I want to go on and have to go through all these pages, I can preview, and there's the mathematics written out. So let's take a look at the drag and drop. It's quite an interesting one. You type the question and you say drag and drop the correct term. When I'm exiting, you have these double square brackets, 1 with that and 2 with that, and that then refers to a set of choices. So the 1 up there is is here, and you've got this group 1 in this case are the different choices you have. Then I can also have group 2 if I have it. We're just running out of time, but basically you can set up all the choices there. I won't go through them all because we're kind of running out of time. You can do matching questions, multiple choice. Numerical is just you have a number, and true and false, and they're all the setups for that. So looking at the time, I think I'm going to stop now and leave just a little time for questions. Narisha. Oh, I just want to say one more thing, is that you can add an assignment by going down here. The other type is the assignment, and the assignment is just like an essay question. You pose the question here, and the students can fill in a text box, and you can have all sorts of settings here, like a quiz. So whereas the essay question is meant for a short answer inside a quiz, the assignment is meant for a longer answer, like in a proper essay or a report or project. And it can also be used, of course, to upload a handwritten test in form of photographs or a typed document. So at that point, I'm going to stop talking and sharing as well.
Okay, I think we have an question and answer section.
Yeah.
I think this will be better for mathematics modules to typeset the questions and upload as PDF. Can the students scan their solutions and submit as PDF on online assessment? This is from Miao.
Okay, so there are a lot of well, they can photograph it with their cell phone and and send the photograph. That's as good as scanning, but if they want to scan and convert to PDF, that's fine. They can submit in many different formats: PDF, JPEG, PNG. I'm just looking at the questions. I'm sure there's probably a lot of other questions. And okay, so I'm just looking at, can you typeset your question, upload as PDF? Yes, absolutely, you can do that, certainly. Probably easier to read and the students learn that skill, which they need anyway. So absolutely, they can typeset the question PDF and upload it. That's how it's set up, both for the assignment and for the essay question inside the quiz. Better for mathematics modules, yeah, because then we can just use the traditional way of marking by hand. Can they scan their solutions and submit as PDF? Yes, absolutely. Scan and photograph with cell phone. Both would work perfectly well. So we have a question a comment from John Pocock. The only problem with grading on Moodle is that the results are released to all students once they've been graded. This goes against university policy of not releasing grades to students who are not fully financially cleared. Okay, that's an institutional question and technical one with Moodle. I wasn't aware of that. Is there not some way of hiding it? And from Ellie, it is possible to control when results are released to students. One can control the setup. Okay, so that's an answer to that. Because I haven't seen all these. It's a case of from John Pocock. It's a case of systems not integrating. It's easier to provide marks to all students and upload them to SMS as well. Yes, any other comments and questions?
We seem to have a hand up somewhere.
From Inabov?
Yes. I will unmute. Okay, you are unmuted.
Inabov? He's not unmuted yet.
Don't know why. Are you? I think
it's
unmute.
Still showing unmute on your own side in Inabov.
On the bottom left-hand corner, check your little mic.
There's a little microphone icon. Just click on it.
Number.
Could you type your question perhaps or comment? In the meantime, Alistair Clulo, the formats for inserting the mathematical equations. Let me just go back to share screen. Share, sorry, I didn't push share. So if I edit a question, let me just go quickly, try and get to the questions, question bank. Yes, I just need to go into the right category. And then if I go into here, say, and edit what I'm typing in here, I think that's what's meant. And then there's the advanced buttons and then the equation editor. And in some equivalent text boxes in Moodle, I've seen another option for doing it. But if we go into the equation editor, here's where there are different options. I think you can also use TeX and LaTeX I think what happens is this is tech and LaTeX. So mathematical expressions are enclosed in backslash, in this backslash round bracket. And to set them on a separate line, you do a backslash square bracket, type what you want, and then backslash close bracket. And that will set the mathematical expression into its own line. And this is again a solution using text style. Over here is we are using computer programming style, where there are special functions, and I've found out these special functions by going onto Google and searching in the Moodle help files to find the full list of what you can do in terms of when you're calculating something. And all of this is tech, and as I say, what's available in the equation editor. You get the operators, arrows, Greek symbols, and then that. If you want more than that, I'm pretty sure someone like John Pocock could help us, that you can just use tech notation.
Okay, there aren't any other questions.
The number of still hand up, or is that a mistake?
The hand is still up and they are still muted.
All right. Well, we're at the end of the time available. I hope it's been useful to the attendees. I certainly am interested to learn more from all my colleagues about their experiences, ideas, and expertise. But, well, that essentially concludes what I'd prepared to present today. I suppose it's understandable that I couldn't get through all the details of setting the questions, but I think I've kind of presented enough to go on.
Thank you.
So unless there are other questions, I'd like to say thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Alan. This has been a very useful presentation. I just would like to say that this particular workshop will be recorded and uploaded onto the college teaching and learning page. And I don't know whether you'd be happy to have people mail you, Alan, if they have problems or they want to ask a question.
Yes, I'm quite happy to receive questions. And I think it would be nice also to have questions that other people with superior knowledge or different experiences can also reply to.
Yes.
So one avenue is the forum on the Moodle webpage.
Yes.
For the ERT. If everybody's on that as students or student role, they can certainly access that and post questions. That's one means that I can think of,
Yes.
and which then other people can also supply answers. But yes, I'm perfectly happy to receive questions and help in any way.
I think, yeah, that's exactly why we created the modules, for people to have a place to discuss ideas. And so if you want to, you can just go on there and use that. And there'll be resources placed on that, in the module as well. So people can have access to that. I think if people want to share, as I said at the onset of the presentation, they want to share anything new that they've come up with, any sort of like online teaching hacks then we'll be glad to put those as a resource on the module as well. So thank you everybody for attending.
Nirusha, can I just say, if I just share my screen, it may just be useful for a second, to say that on the sandbox under my section, the other sections, I've put this presentation video, which was my first draft, you can say, of my presentation. The one I gave today is a bit shorter. I might update that. This is this is the blog. So I've called it a blog, and here are some quiz examples. Down here are a set of resources with some links. I can add things in there, and the blog is up here. So it's a Moodle forum, and in that blog you can add a new topic. And as far as I know, anybody can put a subject and type something. And then once you've done that, you can post it and put files there if you want to. You may have something to share. And then here's my post, and you can reply to it if you want. So that's just what I've put on as one means of communication. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.